I thought tonight was about us finally fixing things, but as the man I've loved for 10 years slid a cold, white folder across the table between our expensive steaks, I realized the only thing he wanted to fix was his own future by erasing mine. The candlelight flickered in Marcus's eyes, but there was no warmth there. Only the calculated chill of a man who had already moved on. My heart didn't just break. It went silent, waiting for the punchline that never came. Before we dive into how a simple dinner at La Harmonie turned into the battlefield of my life, I want to take a quick second to welcome you all to her quiet empire. We are so glad you're here for this journey of resilience and justice. Where are you joining us from today? Let us know in the comments. We love seeing our global family grow. And if stories of strength and the ultimate comeback move you, please hit that subscribe button. It helps us keep telling these stories for you. The architecture of a life. My name is Elena. For a decade, I was the supportive wife. I was the woman who stayed up until 2 a.m. editing Marcus's business proposals. I was the one who sold my grandmother's antique jewelry to fund his first tech startup. I was the shadow that made sure he shone. Marcus was charming, ambitious, and we lived a life that looked like a dream on Instagram. A penthouse in the city, designer clothes, and a seat at the most exclusive tables. But the higher we climbed, the thinner the air became. "Elena, just sign it," Marcus said, his voice as flat as the paper. "We've outgrown each other. You like the quiet life, the art galleries, the charities. I'm building a kingdom. I need a queen who can keep up, not a relic from my struggling days." I looked down at the document. Divorce petition. The agreement. The words blurred. A relic. "Marcus, I built this company with you. I am the chief creative officer. My ideas are the soul of Oratech." He laughed. A shaba, metallic sound that cut through the soft violin music of the restaurant. On paper, maybe, but I've spent the last 6 months restructuring. You're a consultant, Elena. A replaceable one. The settlement is generous $5 million. Take it and go back to your painting. $5 million. To some, it sounds like a fortune. To the woman who helped build a company now valued at over $3 billion, it was an insult. But Marcus didn't know everything. He thought he was the only one with secrets. What Marcus didn't know, what no one knew, was that I wasn't just Elena Vance, the daughter of a librarian. 25 years ago, my mother fled a life of suffocating wealth. She changed our names and moved us to a small town, teaching me that money was a cage. She never spoke of her father, Achtu Sterling, the reclusive steel king whose empire spanned 3 continents. 3 days ago, a man in a gray suit had approached me at a park bench. He handed me a black envelope. "Mr. Sterling has passed," the man had said. "He spent 20 years looking for his daughter. Since she is gone, the entire estate to holdings, the real estate, the $75 billion private trusted, all falls to you, Elena. On one condition. You must prove you can manage it without the influence of the man you marry." I had tucked that envelope into my bag, intending to tell Marcus that night. I wanted us to use that wealth for good. I wanted us to be a power couple that changed the world. And then he served me papers. The mask falls. I looked at Marcus across the table. He looked so smug, so certain of his victory. He was already checking his watch, probably planning to meet her Sienna, the 24-year-old marketing lead he thought I didn't know about. "You're leaving me for her, aren't you?" I asked softly. Marcus didn't even flinch. "Sienna understands the future. She doesn't hold me back with morals and sustainability. She wants to win. Now, sign the papers, Elena. Don't make this ugly. You don't have the resources to fight me in court." I felt a cold, hard knot form in my stomach. The sadness was being replaced by something else. Something ancient and powerful. The sterling blood in my veins was finally starting to boil. "You're right, Marcus," I said, picking up the elegant fountain pen he had provided. "I don't want to make this ugly." I signed the papers. Not the divorce papers, I signed a small, scrap piece of paper from my purse and handed it to him. On it, I had written a single phone number. "What is this?" He sneered. "The number of the person who just bought the building your office is in," I replied, my voice steady for the first time all night. "And the bank that holds your company's primary line of credit." Marcus chuckled. "Elena, you're delusional. Grief or shock is making you lose your mind, is it?" I stood up, smoothing out my navy silk dress. I looked at the divorce papers on the table. "Keep those." "I won't be signing them. Not yet. Because according to the restructuring you did, if we divorce now, you get half of my assets. And Marcus, you really don't want to know what my assets are worth today." I walked out of that restaurant without looking back. I didn't go to our penthouse. I went to a hotel I know technically owned. The next morning, I met with the executors of the Sterling estate. I walked into a boardroom filled with men who had spent their lives guarding a fortune larger than the GDP of some countries. "I want to exercise the hostile absorption clause," I told him. The lead attorney, a man who looked like he'd been carved out of granite, raised an eyebrow. "Against whom, Miss Sterling?" "Or attack," I said. "I want every debt called in. I want every shareholder offered double the market value for their seats. And I want it done by the time the markets close on Friday." "That will cost billions," the attorney warned. "I have 75 of them," I reminded him. "Start spending." By Wednesday, Marcus's world began to crack. I watched from a distance as Oratech stock began to fluctuate wildly. He'd called me 47 times. I blocked him after the first one. By Thursday, news broke that a mystery conglomerate, the Sterling Group, was aggressively moving on Oratech. Marcus was panicked. He did a live interview on a financial news network, looking haggard and desperate. "We are a family company," he told the cameras. "We will resist any attempt at a takeover. My wife and I are unified in this." I laughed at the screen. Unified. He had sent a courier to my hotel that afternoon with a revised divorce settlement, offering me $10 million if I would just sign and go away. He was trying to get rid of me before the ship sank, not realizing I was the iceberg. The revelation. Friday evening arrived. I dressed in a suit that cost more than Marcus's first car, a Sharp, white power suit that felt like armor. I drove to the Oratech headquarters. The lobby was in chaos. Employees were whispering, sensing the end of an ERA. I took the private elevator to the top floor. I pushed open the double doors to the boardroom. Marcus was there, surrounded by his legal team in Siena, who was clinging to his arm like a life jacket. "Elena!" Marcus gasped, standing up. "What are you doing here? This is a closed board meeting. You've been removed from your position. Remember?" "Actually, Marcus, I'm here for the handover," I said, walking to the head of the table. "The handover? You're losing it," Sienna piped up, her voice high and grating. "The Sterling Group just bought the majority share. We're waiting for their representative to arrive so we can negotiate." I pulled a chair out at the head of the table, the chair Marcus usually sat in. I sat down, crossed my legs, and looked him dead in the eye. "The representative is already here," I said quietly. The room went deathly silent. Marcus's face turned a ghostly shade of gray. "No," he whispered. "No. Your father was a librarian. Your mother was a teacher. You're nobody." "I was a Sterling long before I was a Vance," I replied, "and as the new majority owner of Oratech, I have my first official act of business." I reached into my bag and pulled out the divorce papers he had served me at dinner. I threw them onto the table. They slid across the polished wood, stopping right in front of him. "I've decided to sign them," I said. "But we need to talk about that generous settlement again, because now that I own the company, the penthouse, and the very air you're breathing, I've decided you're the one who's replaceable." Marcus reached for the papers, his hands shaking. But as he opened the folder, his eyes went wide. He didn't see my signature. He saw something else, a document that made the divorce papers look like a grocery list. "Elena," he stammered, looking up at me with pure terror. "What did you? I didn't just buy your company. Marcus? I leaned forward, the shadows of the room dancing in my eyes. I found the offshore accounts. The ones you used to hide money from the IRS. The ones you used to fund Sienna's marketing trips. I stood up and leaned over him, whispering so only he could hear. The police are in the lobby. Marcus, and they aren't here for a board meeting. Is this the end for Marcus? Or does he have one final desperate card to play? And what will Elena do when she discovers that her inheritance comes with a dark secret that her grandfather spent his whole life trying to hide? Wait until you see what happens next. The silence in the boardroom was so heavy you could hear the frantic ticking of Marcus's designer watch. His face, once the picture of arrogant composure, was now a mask of sheer terror. He looked at the document I had placed on top of the divorce Papaza forensic audit. That linked his personal signature to a shell company in the Cayman Islands used for massive tax evasion. Elena waits, he stammered, his voice cracking. We can talk about this. We are a team. Think about everything we built. I leaned back, crossing my arms. We didn't build this. Marcus, I built the vision, and you built a house of cards. And unfortunately for you, wind is coming. Sienna, who had been standing frozen by his side, suddenly let go of his arm as if it were made of hot lead. She wasn't a partner. She was a passenger, and she was looking for the nearest exit. Marcus, what is she talking about? Sienna hissed, her eyes darting toward the door. You told me the finances were handled. They were. Marcus shouted, losing his grip. He turned back to me. He's ice wild. You think you can just walk in here with your grandfather's blood money and ruin me? I'll fight you. I'll tell the press you're a fraud. I'll claim you coerced me into signing. The heavy oak doors of the boardroom swung open. Two men in dark suits, flashing federal badges, stepped inside. Behind them stood my lead attorney, Mr. Sterling's most trusted advisor. Marcus Vance, the taller officer asked. You're under investigation for grand larceny and felony tax fraud. You need to come with us. The fall of the king. The walk of shame was public. As the officers led Marcus through the glass-walled lobby of Oratech, the very employees he had looked down upon stood in stunned silence. Some pulled out their phones, recording the moment the visionary CEO was led away in handcuffs. I stood on the mezzanine, looking down at him. For a fleeting second, our eyes met. I expected to feel a rush of triumph. A surge of "I told you so." But all I felt was a profound sense of peace. The man who tried to discard me like a piece of trash was now being discarded by the world he loved so much. By the time the sun set, Marcus was in a holding cell, and Sienna had already scrubbed her social media of every photo she'd ever taken with him. But as I sat in the quiet of my new office, the CEO, sweet Mr. Sterling's attorney, Silas, walked in. He didn't look happy. He placed a leather-bound journal on my desk. Elena, Silas said gravely, there is something in your grandfather's private records you need to see. It's regarding the source of the initial $75 billion. My heart hammered against my ribs. What is it, Silas? Your grandfather didn't just build an empire, Silas whispered. He took it. And the family he took it from. They've been waiting for a Sterling to take the throne again. They aren't interested in lawsuits. They're interested in blood. The ghost in the machine. I opened the journal. The pages were filled with my grandfather's shaky handwriting, detailing a betrayal from 50 years ago. He hadn't just been a Steel King. He had been a corporate raider who had decimated a rival family, the Romanovs, leaving them with nothing. According to the notes, the youngest Romanov heir had vowed that when the Sterling fortune finally passed to the next generation, they would return to reclaim what was theirs. The intercom on my desk buzzed. It was the front desk. Miss Sterling? There's a man here! to see you. He says he's the new head of your security detail, sent by the estate, Mr. Nikolai. I looked at Silas. He shook his head slowly. I didn't hire a new security head yet. Elena, my blood ran cold. I looked at the security monitor on my desk. Standing in the lobby was a man in an impeccably tailored black suit. He looked up at the camera and smiled a slow, predatory grin. He held up a small, vintage coin with the Romanov crest. I wasn't just inheriting a fortune. I was inheriting a war. The final move. I realized then that Marcus was a small-time villain. He was a mosquito compared to the wolves now circling my door. But Marcus had taught me one valuable lesson. Never let them see you coming. I didn't run. I didn't call the police. I picked up the phone and dialed the prison where Marcus was being held. Marcus, I said when he picked up the recorded line, I'm going to get you out. I'm going to pay your bail and hire the best lawyers in the country. There was a long silence. Why? He rasped. After everything I did. Because, I said, watching Nikolai enter the elevator on the monitor, I need a distraction, and you're very good at being loud and drawing attention. You're going to be the face of the company again. For 48 hours, you're going to take the heat while I move the sterling assets into a decentralized trust that no one, not even a Romanovi, can touch. And what happens to me after those 48 hours? Marcus asked. You go back to your life, I said coldly. The one where you have nothing but $5 million and a signed divorce. Pay, take it, or leave it. With Silas's help, I moved the $75 billion into a series of charitable foundations and employee-owned trusts. I kept enough to live comfortably. But the empire my grandfather had stolen was effectively dismantled and returned to the people and the industries he had crushed. The Romanovs found an empty vault. By the time Nikolai reached my office, I was gone. All that was left on the desk was my grandfather's journal and a note. The debt is paid. The empire is quiet now. I moved to a small coastal town. Far from the skyscrapers and the cold marble boardrooms, I opened a small art gallery. I paint the ocean, now sometimes turbulent, sometimes calm, but always free. Marcus tried to restart his tech career, but his reputation was radioactive. He eventually took the $5 million and disappeared. A broken man who realized too late that you can't build a kingdom on a foundation of lies. The moral of the story. As I sit here today, looking out at the waves, I realize that true power isn't about how much you have. It's about what you're willing to give up to do the right thing. Wealth can be a gift, or it can be a cage. Marcus chose the cage. I chose the key. Before we go, I want to thank you for staying with us until the end of this journey. This story reminds us that justice might be delayed, but it is rarely denied. And sometimes the best revenge isn't winning the game it's changing the rules entirely. If you enjoyed Elena's journey from a relic to a queen, don't forget to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had a moment where you realized you were worth so much more than people treated you? We'd love to hear your stories of resilience. Stay strong, stay quiet in your power, and we'll see you in the next story here at Her Quiet Empire. Would you like me to create a storyboard for the key scenes of this script, or perhaps generate an opening theme song for the video? The air in the boardroom turned to ice. Marcus's hand, still hovering over the divorce papers, began to shake so violently that the heavy gold ring on his finger rattled against the mahogany table. It was the ring I had bought him, with my first page, symbol of a loyalty he had just traded for a younger model and a larger ego. Elena, you're a sterling. Marcus breathed, the words sounding like a curse. The Sterlings are legends. They're ghosts. You told me your father was a high school teacher who died of a heart attack. My father was a man who wanted to protect me from people like you. Marcus, I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous silky. calm. He knew that if the world found out I was the sole heir to the sterling steel fortune, I would never know if a man loved me for my heart or my bank account. Turns out, he was right to be worried. Sienna took a frantic step back, her heels clicking sharply on the marble. Marcus, we have to go. If the police are downstairs. The police aren't just downstairs, Sienna, I interrupted, flashing a sharp, pitying smile at her. They've already frozen the joint accounts. Marcus used to fund your influencer lifestyle. That Cartier bracelet on your wrist. It was bought with embezzled funds from Oratech's R&D budget. Technically, that belongs to the company. And since I now own the company, I'd like it back. Sienna's face turned a blotchy red. But before she could speak, the doors burst open. The arrest and the aftermath. The detectives didn't offer Marcus the dignity of a private exit. They read him his rights right there. In front of the board of directors he had spent months manipulating. As the handcuffs clicked shut, Marcus looked at me not with sorrow, but with a desperate, ugly rage. You think you've won? He spat as they moved him toward the door. You're a librarian's daughter, playing dress-up. Elena, you don't know how to run a global empire. You'll be bankrupt in a year, and I'll be out on bail by morning. Actually, Marcus I called out as he reached the threshold, I've already hired the firm that handled your grandfather's estate to oversee the transition. And as for your bail, I've exercised my right as the primary creditor to block any liquidation of your personal assets. You're broke, truly, deeply broke. The look on his face as the elevator doors closed was worth every late night I'd ever spent working for him. But as the room cleared and the silence returned, I felt the weight of the $75 billion settling onto my shoulders. It wasn't just money. It was a weapon. And I had a lot of targets left. The shadow of Arthur Sterling. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of private jets, forensic accountants, and meetings with men in gray suits who spoke in whispers. I moved into the Sterling Estate, fortress of glass and stone tucked away in the mountains. It was there, in my grandfather's private library, that I found the Black Ledger. Arthur Sterling hadn't just been a businessman. He had been a collector of secrets. He had built his $75 billion fortune by knowing exactly who was stealing from whom, who was sleeping with whom, and who was desperate enough to sell their soul for a seat at the table. As I flipped through the pages, I saw familiar names. Political leaders, CEOs of rival tech firms. And there, on page 142, was a section titled, The Oratech Takeover. My heart stopped. The ledger detailed the plan my grandfather had started years ago. He had been tracking Marcus Vance since he was in college. He had allowed Marcus to meet me. He had funneled anonymous seed money into Oratech to see if Marcus was worthy of the Sterling bloodline. The final entry in my grandfather's hand read, Vance is a predator, but a clumsy one. He will betray Elena. When he does, she will either break or she will become a Sterling. If she reads this, she has chosen the latter. Give her everything. She know what to do with the bodies. I wasn't a victim of Marcus's betrayal. I was the survivor of my grandfather's final test, the revenge plan. Phase 2. Marcus was sitting in a county jail cell, unable to afford the high-priced lawyers he once boasted about. His friends had vanished. Sienna had already moved on to a mid-level venture capitalist in Singapore. But I wasn't done. Justice isn't just about putting a man in jail. It's about dismantling the world he tried to build on your back. I called a press conference at the Oratech headquarters. I stood on the stage, looking out at a sea of cameras. I didn't look like the supportive wife anymore. I looked like a woman who could buy and sell the building we were standing in. Oratech was built on a lie, I told the world. But today, that ends. I am launching the Sterling Vance Foundation. We are taking the $3 billion valuation of this company and converting it into a nonprofit dedicated to ethical AI, environmental restoration. Every employee will receive a 20% stake in the new entity. Marcus Vance's name will be scrubbed from the history of this firm. The headlines the next morning were a symphony, from divorcee to dictator of good. The sterling heiress reclaims the throne. I watched the news on a small tablet as I sat in the visitor's room of the prison. Marcus sat across from me, looking haggard. His expensive suit was gone, replaced by a rough orange jumpsuit. "Why are you here?" he asked, his voice a ghost of its former self. "To gloat." "No," I said, sliding a single piece of paper across the glass. "I'm here to give you a choice. This is a confession. Sign it. Detail the offshore accounts you used to hide money from the board, and I'll make sure you're moved to a minimum security facility. You'll be out in 5 years. And if I don't—" I leaned in, my reflection in the glass overlapping with his. "If you don't, I'll use the sterling ledger to ensure every man you ever stepped on comes forward. I'll make sure you stay in here until you're an old man who can't remember the name of the woman he tried to ruin." Marcus looked at the pen. He looked at me. He saw the cold, hard light of a sterling in my eyes. She signed. The quiet empire. I didn't stay in the mountains. I didn't stay in the city. I took a small portion of my inheritance, a mere few $100 million, and bought a stretch of coastline in a place where no one knew the name Sterling. I built a house that smelled like salt and cedar. I don't wear diamonds anymore. I wear the same old sweaters I had when I was a librarian's daughter. But now, when I walk through the town, I know that the local school is funded for the next 100 years. I know the hospital has the best equipment in the country. I built my own empire, not one made of steel and secrets, but one made of peace and purpose. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that dinner at L'Armani. I think about the moment the folder touched the table. I used to think that was the worst night of my life. Now, I realize it was the best. It was the night the cage door opened. The moral reflection. As our story concludes, we are left with a powerful truth. Marcus thought power was something you took from others. Elena learned that true power is something you find within yourself when everything else is stripped away. Betrayal is a fire. It can either turn you to ash or it can forge you into something unbreakable. Elena didn't just inherit a fortune. She inherited the courage to be exactly who she was meant to be. Thank you for joining us for this special 2-part journey on her quiet empire. If this story moved you, if it gave you a spark of hope that justice always finds its way home, please give this video a thumbs up. Your support allows us to continue sharing these stories of incredible women who turned their setbacks into setups for a legendary comeback. Don't forget to check out our other stories. And remember, your empire doesn't have to be loud to be powerful. Until next time, keep your head high and your spirit quiet.